I guess I can go ahead and start. It's about 8:33, March 21st, 2024. This is the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council special session. We're having, again, good morning. My name is George Redmond. I am the chair of the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. Specifically, we are here to review and to allocate some fundings that we've had for this first year and to listen to the recommendations from my sister, who is the committee chair of allocations, about what's being recommended to the board. So I'll let her speak a little bit more about that. At this point, I don't know if we need to do an introduction with everyone else. Hannah, I think either we can just do that with a vote. That's safe to say, or would you prefer that?
It might be good to get a running tally of everyone who is here.
Okay.
But if we'd rather, when we just go through and vote and have everybody make sure that we catch everyone as they're doing that, that's fine too.
Okay. That's kind of what I was thinking. We can combine it at that point.
Okay.
All right. Angel, take it away. Why are we here?
Okay, we are here to vote on the funding recommendations for fiscal year 24 and 25. So in our, oh, you're about to share it. I was like, where did everybody go?
Sorry, okay. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay.
All right, so in our previous meeting with the allocations committee, we recommended splitting the current $73,357 between Umoja and Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program. They both presented extremely well programs that support the community. We already know about the Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program, but Umoja and is it Unete? Am I correct?
Unete?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Their programs that aren't funded through DJJ are doing an extreme service with Black and Brown youth in the community, and being able to support them in any kind of fashion was exciting to do. We also chose to discontinue funding for Buncombe Structured Day for fiscal year 24 and 25. The conversation started off of the monitoring recommendation, and then we were looking at the numbers served and where they were at, and believe that it would be in the best interest to discontinue funding for Buncombe Structured Day. With that, that leaves $66,893 that was allocated to be advertised in a second RFP, like we did for the $73,357. Is that it, George? Do I go into the RFP recommendations now, or do we just?
I mean, the part of the allocations committee is also recommended, right, that a new RFP would go out. And so you can kind of explain that's just, since those funds from Buncombe Structured Day are being removed, or at least that's the recommendation, the next step would be an RFP for those funds for this 2024-2025 fiscal year. And these are the priorities that we have felt that new RFP should be attached to, which is CCAs, individual group counseling, substance use counseling, restorative services, structured day, tutoring, academics. So those are the priorities that this new RFP should encompass based on the funds that structured day would have had. Besides that, that is the recommendations. Is that correct, Angel, from the allocations committee?
Yes.
Are there any questions? discussions before anyone makes a motion? I see someone's on chat, so let just, oh, that's Martin. Drive safe, Martin. Any discussions, any thoughts, anyone?
I have a question, D. Tyrell. Angel, can you talk a little bit about during the observation period, what was observed? Was this a mutual decision to discontinue funding to Buncombe Structured Day? Can you provide a little more information there?
Yes, so think of what his name, Mr. Babowski. I want to make sure I said it correctly. He and Brandon were on the monitoring committee. He was present during the monitoring presentations, and he went through and basically gave numbers, speaking on the amount per child and how they're serving and how much money is going towards them. And it just really, it wasn't.
Ring the bell right there on the side of the wall.
And it just wasn't adding up financially to only serve 10 kids. And at that point, there was just some confusion on the numbers of actual served, and whom they had reported served at that particular meeting. So then questions were just around, the number of students served. Did we feel like they were going to be able to make their 15? And at the next meeting that we had for the allocations hearing, they presented where they were at. They're supposed to have served 15 this year. And it wasn't at a place where it looked like they were going to be able to serve 15. I want to say they had served 7. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lorraine.
Yeah, they had served 5 and had 2 additional referrals that were in process of intake.
And
so it would be 7.
Then I presented some things I had found as far as last year's number of out-of-school suspended students from just Asheville Middle being 60. And currently at Asheville Middle, 45 students have been suspended after out of school. And my concern was that their numbers that they're wanting to serve in the program just isn't fitting with where this generation is right now. Much respect and admiration for this long-standing program that's been around since 1997. And I wanted to make sure that I also let them know that. I also mentioned that for the past 2 years that I was on the board, I was the only person who was trying to save the program and was working hard to encourage the rest of the board members, because this isn't a conversation that just came up this year. This is something that has been going on for a few years as far as continuing funding because of the numbers and the referrals. So with Umoja presenting, we found out also that Umoja also has a out-of-school suspension program for their students. Their program is Monday through Friday. They also, if they have students that are in their out-of-school program, they transition over to their after-school program. So they essentially have them from 8:30 until 6 o'clock or end of program, Monday through Friday. I just think that we're at a place where we have the necessities of the kids have kind of changed, and we need to maybe look more into funding the programs that have the ability to care for the kids longer than the 9:30 to 2:30 Monday through Thursday timeframe. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate you providing that feedback.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Just want to point out, it looks like Martin has a comment. Is there anything that will preclude Structure Day for applying for the same RFP? He's a little fuzzy on the procedure there. So if we're going to put out another RFP, looks like Martin is asking, would they be eligible to apply for that same funding, or how would that work?
I believe they would be, and I think we talked about that in the meeting as well. I mean, if they would be able to apply, and it would just be the same process as before. So to answer his question, yes. Correct, Lorraine? Am I correct?
Yeah, that if you all voted for this year to not, I know that in the future they would be able to. For this RFP, since you all are voting to remove their funding for year 2 and reallocate it, they would not be eligible for this year, but they'd be eligible to apply for a future year. Because the reason the RFP is available is because you all voted to remove their funds for year 2. So that's but in any future RFP, they would be able to apply. But for this one, they would not, because it's like those funds are being returned from them. Now, let's see. It's a little, yeah, so in the future they would be able to, but not for this specific one.
Any other questions? Okay, George, back to you.
All right, so we have, obviously everyone knows why we're here at this point. Those questions are good questions to be asked. McGirt, thanks for asking for a little bit of sort of synopsis of why we got here, how we got here. Angel, for providing the moment that we're here for this sort of special session. This just means, tentatively, it means Buncombe Structure Day, based on the recommendations, would be removed from funding, would have to wait another year before applying back. But we've got the recommendations, so the next thought would be, is there motion from anyone? Then we would need a second, and then we would look for votes. I would say let the motion, if someone does make that, there is a second component also to that RFP recommendation as well, those priorities. So if you do make a motion and you agree on both the first part and the second part, please state that so that we know for clarity that that motion carries for both items. Thank you.
D. Tyrell McGirt here. I make a motion that we approve funding for Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program in the amount of $50,000 and Umoja for $23,257. In addition to approving the RFP recommendations to allocate $66,893 for the types of programs that are listed below. Does that work?
I'd second
Yes.
that.
Thank you, Bricker. Thank you, McGirt. All right, so it looks like at this point we can almost just do a roll call of the voting members. And I'm trying to figure out who all that is here. I'm going to go ahead and start, so at least I'm looking at an email. Please let me know who I've missed. Suzanne, are you here?
Yes, and I would vote yay, in favor.
Thank you. Dr. Armstrong?
Yay.
Banta?
Yay.
Scott Dennis, you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yay.
Bethcraft? Beth, you there? No. Somehow it unmuted, but I still can't hear you. Is anyone here, Beth? No. Okay, we'll come back to you, Beth. Is Ms. Kadia Ross, is she here as well?
Yay.
Gert, I guess, made the motion. Bricker made the motion. Angel,
Yay.
Mr. Priester.
Yay.
I thought I saw Blythe. Is she here?
I'm here. Yay.
Who am I missing? Is Andy Babowski here or Shannon Martin here?
I'm here. I vote in favor of the motion. This is Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. Anyone else?
Don Johnson here.
Don. Yeah,
Yay.
I miss you. Thank you, Don. I do want to point out specifically, I want to appreciate Don's work in this allocations and monitoring. He stepped up real big for JCPC, and it's gotten to see a lot of the programs firsthand. So I've got to do some monitoring reports. So Don, thank you for your service. I appreciate all the work you put in as well.
CC Weston. Yay.
Oh, ACC.
And I think we have Eric Robinson as well.
Yay.
Hey,
Martin Moore, yay.
George and Hannah's Natasha, yay.
Okima King, yay.
Loveland, you said yay as well.
I did, yay.
Anyone else, Hannah?
Sylvia, Chief Clement, but I believe I don't know if you want to vote on this or abstain from given the funding.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay.
Martin in the chat said yay.
Okay. Thank you. And Beth Craft, can we hear you? Are you able to type into the chat?
Yay.
Okay. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
And that's, I believe, everyone I can see. Is there anyone we're missing?
I think that's it. If there's anything else, any other comments, any other announcements, anything that needs to be made, Lorraine, at this point? When does the RFP go out? I guess maybe would be a question at that point. And how soon are we accepting applications?
You all would want to, yeah, and you all included the RFP in the motion with those three
Priorities.
components to it, with those three priorities.
I believe I shared a draft RFP form, and so I'll work with our communications department to see if we can release that later today or tomorrow, but hopefully before this weekend, before the end of the week, we can get it out. It needs to be posted for 30 days. So one question, George, we haven't gotten a chance to chat with you about it. I think the council is scheduled to meet on April 21st, the third Thursday of April. 30 days from today would be Friday the 22nd, and 30 days from tomorrow plus business day would be Monday after the meeting. So I think that depending on the, how many applications come in, I think that there's probably an anticipation that the two programs that were funded partially might reapply for the rest of the application. So depending on how many applications are received and how long that review and allocations decision is expected to make, I think that maybe the executive committee or the council can consider if you want to try to push the full council meeting back and have it be a part of the full council meeting, maybe the last week of April, or if we have the typical April meeting and then figure out an additional time to review the allocations for this new RFP.
Okay, I'm assuming we can make that decision. We just got to make sure we get enough notice from everyone. So essentially, Hannah, you're just talking about moving back our normal meeting, maybe one
It's-
week or so.
It's possible. For to be in compliance with open meeting laws, we needed to give you all as a council a week's notice to hold this meeting, and then we need to be able to list the RFP for 30 days in accordance with JCPC policies. So that, yes, our timelines will be a little bit off from an ideal scenario, but I think we can work with, if you all want to consider pushing back the full meeting and trying to address the allocations during a full meeting, I can work with you all to find a time, whether the last week of April or beginning of May.
That's what I go ahead and kind of approve, but I guess tentatively we kind of wait and see what the applications come through, as long as we give enough notification for everyone. But it depends on that RFP when that gets out. So we'll start that process then. Thank you, Hannah, for explaining our next steps, which will be obviously looking at the RFP. We'll have to be making decisions as that coming up as well in our next meeting, potentially. So with all that being said, you have on the agenda the 3 priorities that the new RFP will be encompassing. And so we'll be waiting for those applications to come through. Any other announcements? Any other comments?
There was a question by Banta, but I think you all have answered that of when the RFP would be due. That it would be due most likely the 22nd.
And Lorraine, this is for the funding. Funding kicks in July 1st. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Just to clarify, funding does kick in July 1st. The all except the funds that had been allocated for Buncombe Structure Day for year 2, all of those have are already voted on. You all are already voted on. For everyone else for year 2-year funding, and then with the addition of the 2 programs you just voted to partially fund for their requests, Buncombe Youth Justice Clinical Program and Umoja and Unite, their joint application. So for the additional funds as the only remaining funds for the RFP, those are all for 24-25 and need to be spent within that time period. The allocations committee's purpose for having the meeting today instead of waiting until the regular meeting in April is to get the RFP out sooner and give programs that do apply to be able to start sooner and have their funds and be able to do a full year of programming. Technically, the JCPC has until December 31st to allocate any unallocated funds, but at the end of this session at the end of this next RFP, by doing it sooner, you all will hopefully be able to include that in the funding to start July 1st. So all programs will be fully funded with the amounts that they're going to have for the 24-25 fiscal year. And the commissioners will be able to prove that, and everyone will be able to have a smooth July 1st start date is the goal. So, because there are a few just general steps that the commissioners have to sign the county funding plan and it gets approved, and once their budget passes. So there are some steps like that behind the scenes that have to happen after. So thank you all for your great attendance today. You all have had a good turnout. So thank you all for your participation.
Lorraine, fair to say that the Buncombe Structure Day will be paid up until the end of June. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. This does not affect their funding for this year.
And
This does not affect for.
what happens now to the van? Is that separate RFP? What, I guess, comes of that, and how do we put that back out for a resource for the community?
The other piece that was discussed during allocations, thanks for bringing that up, George. The other piece that was discussed during the allocations meeting is that y'all may recall that Buncombe Structure Day, there were additional funds freed up from a program that closed early and that didn't spend all of their funds. And some of those were reallocated last year by the Buncombe JCPC for Buncombe Structure Day to purchase a van, to purchase a vehicle. When a program funded by the JCPs closes, that vehicle or any large, well, actually even small capital expense items get returned to the JCPC, which is a branch of the county, to be reallocated to another program or to be used by a county program. So that's something that the JCPC will be able to vote on to decide about for next year for what happens with that vehicle.
And Lorraine, specifically, will this, since Buncombe Structure Day isn't closing, and I just want to say that for terminology purposes, when I hear closing, if they're still not closed but still working, they still have to free or return the van because of the proceeds that are given. Is that correct? Because that's different. To me, it seems like when a program closes, then everything is kind of like a store. It kind of liquidates and it's done. But for a program that's just not getting the funding from JCPC, I guess that piece just attaches, and so that has to be returned. So it's almost equivalent of money. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for making that distinction. Buncombe Structure Day is not closing. They're just losing their funding from the JCPC. And so because of that, because anytime there's a capital expenditure voted on by the JCPC, those capital expenditures go back to the JCPC if that program is no longer funded. So starting for next year, that vehicle would come back to the JCPC. Now you all can talk about that at your April meeting and have some recommendations, but the program would use the vehicle until the end of this fiscal year.
And I can, for folks who as either reminder or information for newer folks, in the past year or two when this is something similar has happened, there was a decision by the JCPC to have currently funded programs submit a very brief email with maybe a paragraph description or justification for why they're applying for use of a van. And then, so it was a much less, lesser application process, just but then the council reviewed all the application or all the justifications from the programs that submitted one and made a decision from that.
Thank you, Hannah. All right. I can't think of anything else, but again, one final call. Any other public comment, any other announcement, any questions, concerns, anything before we get a motion to adjourn?
Angelica, I guess you can probably see if there were any public comments.
There were no public comments on public input.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Nope.
Well, I'll say before we a motion to adjourn, I'll say that I will email the JCPC as soon as the RFP can go out. Lorraine, does it need to go out at the same time as the press release, or is it possible to put out the RFP through email notification to the council and programs today, and that if the RFP or if the press release has to wait until tomorrow?
You can send it out, but it has to be 30 days from the publication date.
Okay, great, thank you.
So if you do that, just put the publication date on the RFP.
Okay.
All right. I know everyone's got a wonderful day ahead of them, and I appreciate everyone being here this morning. Obviously some difficult decisions, but I'm glad that we're able to, again, provide services for our community and for the youth here. Some great programs in Moja, Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program, and I look forward to what this new RFP brings out as well. At this time, we can get a motion. We can all go back to our merry ways, and look forward to an email from Hannah.
A second.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Thank you all for being here.
Bye.
Thank you all.